back to the final episode of Series 1 5am Chats, and today I am joined by Emma Benyon, who is a motherhood coach and self-care expert. Now, I think you'd agree that us mums could all do with a bit more self-care, so hopefully you can take on some of Emma's tips and advice. So grab yourself a cup of tea and let's get into it. Welcome back to the last in this series of 5am Chats, and it is a very special episode because I am so excited to be joined by Emma, who is a motherhood coach and self-care expert. Now, this is an area that I need to focus on myself, so I am very interested to hear all about her tips and tricks to get more self-care and prioritize myself a little bit more. So welcome, Emma.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am absolutely excited to start talking about self-care. It is one of my favorite topics, and just to share it from a different perspective that hopefully makes it nice and easy and a simple way to approach it.
So can you start by telling us a bit about how you got into this coaching business, how you decided to set it all up from in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. So I set up my business originally when my daughter, who's now 6.5, was 4 weeks old. And it was very different back then. It was a product-based business, and I was creating products for mums to help them take time for themselves, to really remind them of the amazing job that they were doing. And I created that space because when I had my daughter and when I was pregnant, I really struggled to find, and thankfully it's very different now. I really struggled at that point to find a space where actually people were talking about, the honest reality of being a mom, like that it was hard, that it was tough, and actually going into that space, you are completely transformed. And it's okay to not know what you're doing and to find it hard. And so I set up my business and I was doing lots of different things at that time. And I'm also a full-time teacher and I still do that now. So I teach in post-16 education and support pastorally. So I was on maternity leave obviously at that time and was, trying to build my business. And then went back to work. And in between all that, I had some coaching for, to help me grow my business. And the ripple effect that coaching had, wasn't just in my business, it was across all contexts of my life. And then obviously COVID hit, and I'm sure that we all remember that kind of I guess compressed time that's maybe referred to as where we spent so much time back at home. And for me, that kind of really replicated what I found maternity leave like. And obviously business had to change because I couldn't be doing what I was doing before. And after some conversations with a coach that I was working with, she was like, well, you could do this, you could coach, like you've been teaching for how many years, like you're essentially doing it anyway with the women that you're working with, you just haven't got the qualification to do that. And coaching is a really interesting space because at this point we're having this conversation, there isn't actually any sort of let's say mandatory accreditation to a coach. There are ethical ways of working, and there are also people who say they're a coach and don't actually have those qualifications. And it was really important to me to get those qualifications to actually do it in a way that was right and a way that respected the clients that I would potentially work with, and did it from a completely ethical perspective with those skills and tools to really make it effective. And so I started that journey of, training to be a coach and really embracing myself in that learning process, while also learning so much about myself, completely transforming my life and my business at the same time. And that journey is now like 3-4 years down the line. And I'm really embracing that space of coaching and really supporting mums, to develop those simple self-care practices, because my journey was one of, constantly hitting burnout, not taking care of myself properly. And then when we come to make those big changes, when we come to, start a business or start a family or anything else that life throws at us, we're not able to come at that from a resource space because we're not taking care of ourselves. So I feel really passionate about helping mums to develop those really simple self-care practices. And that's the starting point before we do anything else. However, I'm sure there'll be people listening and watching who are like rolling their eyes at that concept of self-care because it has such negative connotations. We're met with so much negativity, and it maybe baggage is the right word, around that phrase that makes it and can make it really difficult for us to engage with it in a really productive way. And coming from my experience, I'm bringing it in really simple, easy ways that are not that typical kind of, it should be a spa day, should be getting your hair done, all those things are lovely, but they're often not achievable for mums, especially mums with new babies or mums with little kids, mums who are working, juggling all of the things, those things are lovely, but definitely not achievable weekly, monthly. And so it's about bringing things in that do help us. And that's something that I've learned along the way. And now I'm really passionate about sharing that because the ripple effect that comes from really taking care of ourselves and valuing that is just incredible.
Yeah, I think there's all this phrase, isn't there, around mum guilt and
Mm-hmm.
how somehow we should feel guilty for prioritizing ourselves or
Mm-hmm.
taking time away from our children, and it just feels very different for mums than it does for dads. I mean, in the experience I've had, it's been, if the dad's stepping in and looking after the children, it's like daddy daycare, whereas
Mm-hmm.
there's no phrases like that around mums.
Mm-hmm.
And there is all of these kind of historical kind of connotations,
Mm-hmm.
isn't there, that need to disappear. We're working, we're juggling
Mm-hmm.
everything, and it's only natural that we're going to feel overwhelmed, we're going to feel burnt out and stressed, and then nobody is getting the best of us when we feel like that. And it has a knock-on effect on everybody and how everybody feels. So I think I know that I definitely could have done with some help in those early
Mm-hmm.
days. Our daughters are a similar age. My first daughter just turned 7, so I felt the same as you in the sense that at that time there was nothing on social media that was honest about parenting. It was all very lovely and all these lovely, perfectly curated images, and I just felt horrible at home, trapped really by myself with this crying baby and suffering with what I now know was postnatal depression,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt very alone. And if I had had support from a coach like yourself, I'm sure I would have recovered much quicker and felt much better and much less guilty
Mm-hmm.
for wanting to prioritize myself a little bit. So I think what you're doing is really, really important.
Thank you. That the motherhood guilt thing is interesting, isn't it? Because we feel it and we can't escape that feeling often. But it doesn't serve anybody, does it? It doesn't serve us. Our children have no
No.
clue that we feel guilty about doing X, Y, or Z. They're just really happy to see us when we come back, and or when we come back down to whatever that it looks like. I think when we feel that way, it's really interesting to notice it and kind of park it because it's not going to help us. If it is okay for us to go and do whatever it is that we want to do, need to do, whatever it might be, then ultimately, noticing, parking it, go and do that thing, come back. And it's not, we can't escape that. And I think it's very difficult to kind of escape that mum guilt. Rather, it's about recognizing it, acknowledging it's there, and, trying to move past that as best as we possibly can because it doesn't serve us, it doesn't serve our children for us to not be meeting our needs or our partners or our friends or whoever And another reflection of that, is to think about perhaps what you would say to a friend. If a friend was saying to you, like, I need to go and do this, but I feel really guilty about leaving my baby or my children or whatever it might be, what would they be saying to you? They'd probably be saying something with lots of kindness, lots of compassion of, probably very similar to what I've said. And so when we have those kind of, whatever it might be in relation to motherhood, because let's be honest, there's so many negative things that get thrown our way, and we often feel like we're not doing a good enough job. Actually, let's talk to ourselves a little bit more kindness and compassion, because we are, entitled to be able to meet our needs as well. And, it's bandied about so much that that's selfish, but ultimately it's not selfish. If we are able to better show up for our children in a way that means that we are not snapping at them, we are, resourced and able to be more supportive and able to actually not be reactive in a situation, that can allow us to navigate motherhood, parenthood with so much more ease, and also model that behavior for our children as well. Because if our child was wanting to do something, perhaps it was a mum and a daughter having a conversation, with the grandchild, like, I know I need to go and do this. Obviously, if that's the relationship setup that you have, that actually, what would they be saying to you? It would be, probably, I felt the same. And, but it's still important that you go and do that. I think it's also really interesting what our children notice of when we have, taken time for ourselves, especially if your children are old enough to kind of understand that mummy or daddy does whatever and why they're doing it, what's the purpose behind it. That can be really interesting to notice the impact, because they know when you are, able to better navigate situations. They know when you are resourced, and that comes across in how we show up, how we behave around them, and how much better then we're also able to meet their needs too.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think it just shows when we're happier, we're calmer at home, we can react to situations much more kind of, I don't know, like with a clearer head. Whereas, for sometimes when you feel like you're not getting a minute to yourself and you're just go, 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 looking after everyone, and you feel like you've not prioritize yourself at all, you can get quite resentful, really, I guess, and then snappy and short-tempered, and nobody wins in that scenario.
No.
So yeah, I feel like there's definitely some stigma that needs to be shifted away from this idea of having a bit of time and space just to look after yourself as well as everyone else. There's always that analogy, isn't there, about putting your safety mask from the plane on first. It's probably a good thing to remember.
With that, it's also important to remember that, when we do these self-care practices, it doesn't have to be stuff that's done in isolation away from our children. It can be things that we share with our children too. And it doesn't have to be that, you go and take half an hour of uninterrupted time. That is lovely. However, for most of us as busy mums, that isn't achievable on a daily, weekly basis. We might get that chance maybe once a month or every couple of months, or maybe we are in a situation where actually we do get that time and we are fortunate to have that. It's worth remembering, though, if we don't, that actually we can also share those experiences and practices with our children too. And ultimately, we're role modeling that again for them as well, in terms of this is how we can practice self-care as a family, or, with you and just your child. And that's another really beautiful way to bring it in.
I think that's really interesting, because we feel like when we're with our children, we have to always do child-centered activities all the time. Let's do some colouring, let's, play a game or dress up, or, do something that we think a child should be doing. But actually, there is something quite important to teach them about just life, really, and the things that we have to do in life, and these practices that I guess that we can do together. It doesn't always have to be child kind of activities to spend time together.
Absolutely. And colouring is a really beautiful example, because if we like to colour, and I have a couple of clients who that's their one of their go-to self-care practices. We can do that at the same time as our children. Or it might be, while they're playing a game or they're, watching telly, that maybe you can sit and read your book, or you can listen to a podcast or an audiobook. It doesn't have to be that we're doing the same activity. We might be doing something different. What it's about is being in that same space and being able to practice and share that. Things like, listening to a playlist that you've created together in the car and singing really loudly is another really beautiful way to bring that in. What we're looking at with all of these different self-care practices, what makes us, feel happy, what brings us joy, what really adds to our energy fuel tank. It doesn't have to just be, that kind of traditional, go and read a book, etc. It can be absolutely anything that works for you in this season of your life right now.
So would you say a good place to start would be to try and think about those little things that make you feel happy or calm or relaxed, and then try and incorporate those into your day somehow?
Yeah, absolutely. And look at where you're already doing things that you can add these to. It's not necessarily about adding in more. There's that, the to-do list that's never ending, and often those self-care practices fall right to the bottom. It's about adding to what we are doing. So, for example, if we are doing the school pickup or nursery pickup, maybe try and get there 5-10 minutes earlier. If it's nice weather, get out and just walk around the block for 5 minutes. Maybe put a podcast on or listen to some music or part of your audiobook, or just sit in the car and take some deep breaths. Breathing is a really beautiful way to calm, ground ourselves, be really present. Again, it's something we can do with our children, and it's also something we can do as and when through our day. Things like, putting some music on, or again, audio book, podcast, when we're doing, some household chores, again, these are things that often, when we do become a parent, they're the first things to go because we're so absorbed in those other kind of daily tasks that we just need to get done. And it's about bringing that kind of the fun, the joy back to those things in those spaces where we can, add to our energy fuel tank, as well as doing the things that needs to be done. If we get time and we can have, that really uninterrupted time to do stuff, then yes, bring all of those other things in that you absolutely love. But let's not add loads of pressure, loads of expectation to it. When we are busy enough, we're juggling so much already, let's simply add to what we're doing. 5-10 minutes every day, every other day, will start to have a massive impact over time.
I have to say, one of my favourite things to do is to just sit in the car, and I do exactly what you said. I go and make sure I have 5 minutes when it's school pickup time, that I can just sit before the madness of the evening routine starts. It's just something really calming about sitting in silence in the car. I don't know what it is, but it's just great. I love it. So I am with you on that one. Right. Well, we've kind of spoken in general a little bit about self-care, but we also asked the community to send in some questions that they had. So I'm going to work through those. And the first one is examples of self-care that don't feel selfish.
So I think some of the examples that we've already mentioned, bringing our children into that mix as well, colouring, even just spending time, just being present together. So often we're multitasking and doing a million other things. Just sit, family movie time, read a book together. Those sorts of things will really start to bring in that grounding, bring in that calmness, and it's things that you can do together. I think with the selfish thing also, it is, it comes back to that mindset. It comes back to all the stuff that we're fed about, juggling everything, caring for other people, prioritizing everybody else's needs before our own. And I think there's also a consideration there to kind of reflect upon in terms of, would we rather be the parent who takes 5-10 minutes to resource ourselves in whatever way that looks like for us, or be a parent who then feels guilty for, shouting or not responding to our children in the way that we would really like to. And so I think sometimes it's useful to look at it from that perspective, because often, and I've been there so many times that I will get a bit impatient, or I'll start to get a bit annoyed. And actually, when I have taken that time for me and I feel more calm and grounded, I respond in a completely different way. And so it's worth kind of remembering those bits too. It's another word that's added to, mum guilt, to all of those negative things that we are wading through each and every day as a parent. And, let's just really break it down to actually, why are we caring for ourselves? What's the purpose and what's the value in that? And that is so that we can better care for ourselves. We can show up as the very best version of ourselves, and not just for, our children, but also for ourselves, because there is so much value in that as well.
Yeah, that's true. I've had this conversation with my husband where I've said to him that I feel like I'm the worst version of myself around my children sometimes, because I am so overstimulated, overwhelmed with everything going on, and I don't react in the same way that I do perhaps when I'm with my friends or when I'm at work. When you are at home with the kids all day and you feel like you're just giving, then that is when you don't react quite how you would like to, and then you always feel terrible about it afterwards and think, oh, I shouldn't have done that. That's not who I want to be as a mum. And I think if there are ways to find those little tiny pockets throughout the day where you can feel like you are filling your own cup as well as everyone else's, then that is a really good thing to make you feel more balanced and calm and react to things in a way that you would want to, and role model for your children. So yeah, I think we
Absolutely.
need to banish the word selfish, banish the word mum guilt, and just try look for those moments where we can look after ourselves as well.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, we've spoken about this as well, but the next question is around self-care that doesn't cost anything. So this is, again, I think that preconception that self-care does have to be a spa day or an expensive treatment of some sort, or a holiday, or something that would cost a lot of money. But we've already sort of spoken about the little things as well.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to cost us anything at all. That is, things like breathing that we've already said, getting out for a walk, or even if, getting out for a walk is unachievable, just standing by your back door or your front door and just soaking up that fresh air, that vitamin D, and taking some calming breaths. That doesn't cost us anything other than, a little bit of time to do that. Even things like making sure that we are getting, especially for someone who works from home or in an office job, we're getting up from our desk at lunchtime and taking those regular breaks. That's also, another element that we can add in. Movement is just as valuable in terms of self-care as anything else is. Doing home workouts, exercises, if that's something that, brings you joy and fills your energy cup. It literally, there are ways around everything to make it, so that it doesn't cost anything. And ultimately, it's whatever you choose to do, it's then about changing it up and making it work for you as well in this season right now. And that's really important, because, how our lives change, in a year's time, in, 2 years' time, in 5 years' time, our lives are going to look completely different. And so it's about, what do we need right now in this chapter of motherhood that we're in, and in our lives right now, that we can add in simply and easily. That just makes it so much more accessible than, I need to spend however many thousands of pounds on a holiday, or, whatever, on getting my hair or my nails done. Just break it down to some really simple things that you can do at home, in your local area, that don't cost absolutely anything at all.
Yeah, even just picking up the phone and talking to a friend can give you a boost, can't it? Just like little
Absolutely.
things like that. So yeah, it doesn't have to cost anything, but I think maybe just recognizing what those things are, like we spoke about before, the things that do make you feel good, and then just trying to consciously work those into your day. Now, the last one, again, we've kind of touched on already, but this is, I don't feel ready to leave my baby. I don't know how I'd relax if I was away from him. So again, I think the preconception here is that you have to leave your child to have self-care, and it has to be time away on your own, switching off, not being a mum, to prioritize self-care. But that's not the case, is it?
No, absolutely not. And especially when we are a new mum and we're not ready to move into that new phase of, you know, being separated from our baby for however long, you know, it's about bringing them into the mix when we're doing those self-care practices, you know, getting out for a walk with them, spending time breathing, you know, if there's baby and mum classes that you can go to that are kind of offering that self-care element as well, you know, maybe yoga or etc., or also accessing the support network that you've got around you. You know, I was in a really privileged position that my mum would come around in an evening after work and I would be able to hand over my daughter. That sounds really horrible when you say it like that, like hand her over. And then I would go and have, you know, maybe an hour. I just pot around the house and I'd do some chores. I'd have a conversation with my mum. I might, you know, I think I went and had some, you know, showers where there was no responsibility for me to then get back out if she started crying. And so it's about accessing that support that's around us to make those things as easy as possible. And it all comes down to that, you know, making it accessible, making it simple, and also making it fun too. So if we're not at that stage yet where we're ready to, you know, leave our baby with somebody else and go and do whatever, let's make it so those practices incorporate your baby as well. And, you know, music, reading, you know, asking for the support so that you can do some of those things where, you know, you don't then need to, you know, you have that kind of little bit of time where you're not having to be the first person who, you know, responds. Just keeping it super, super simple.
There are actually some really nice mum and baby groups now that prioritize the mums more than the babies. So I know that there's some kind of early morning cinemas that you can go to, and you can, you know, watch a nice film, and the baby's not getting anything out of it because they won't understand the film, but it's like a nice space for you to go, and everyone's happy for you to feed your baby or rock them or whatever. So that's a nice thing to do. And then there's also, I know, groups like the Mum Club who hold lovely brunches and lunches across the country, and they're just really nice places for mums to go and have like a nice coffee and chat to other mums and just get out the house, but bring your baby as well. So it doesn't have to be like a sensory class or a music class. It can be something that you're getting enjoyment out of as well as the baby. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Right. Well, that is the end of our questions. So thank you, Emma. Can we just end on a little bit of information about where we can get hold of you, or, you know, anybody who's interested in what you can offer them as a coach? Where can they find you and access all of your information and advice?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me over on my website, which is emmabenyoncoaching.co.uk, or I'm over on Instagram and Facebook at emmabenyon.coach. And I'm also over on the Self-Care and Motherhood Edit podcast, and all of the information about how you can work with me in terms of coaching, self-paced on-demand courses, and also some lovely free resources are over on the website.
Perfect. Thank you very much, and I will
Thank
speak to you
you.
soon. Well, I hope you found that as useful as I did. I know that I picked up some really great little tips to get a bit more self-care into my day every day. Well, I hope you found that as useful as I did. I know that I will be trying to find those little moments throughout my day to practice a bit more self-care. I hope you've enjoyed this series, and look out for more episodes in series 2 coming very soon.